more than 30 people that we have in the company essentially are financed by what we call play money, because they are just working on new stuff we want to get done.
This is the Time on Wing podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. Welcome back. I'm Courtney Miller with Visual Approach Analytics. With me, as always, Garrick Deschavan of Collateral Verifications. Garrick, who are we talking to today?
We've got somebody that's a guest that's overseas. Actually, we have two guests that are overseas, sorry.
Different seas.
Different seas, that's right, different seas. We have the pleasure of having Thomas Jaeger and Max Oldorf of ch-aviation. So we'll start with Thomas, and so Thomas is the founder and co-owner of and CEO of ch-aviation, and he has he's a little bit on the younger side, so he's younger than even you. Thomas has got a bunch of positions as director of product management. He did it for Mercator Asia, for TIC Systems, for Radix International. He also dabbled in aircraft marketing for EUJet. And he also did marketing and business development for Intersky Airlines. So he has a BA in Business Administration and Management from the University of St. Gallen. But with Max, so Max Oldorf, he is the co-founder and chief commercial officer at ch-aviation. He has had various roles at Intersky Airlines as CFO, head of charter sales, business development, sales and marketing. From the education standpoint, Max is a different story. He does not have a degree. He did go to a couple of different schools, but he does not have a degree, and he has also a good reason for that. So we will let them tell us about those kind of, I think, very great reasons and why they are doing what they're doing today. So it's going to be a really kind of a fun chat with them. So for Max and Thomas, this is your time on wing.
Just a quick intermission before we continue with the show. We do get a lot of questions about how our listeners can support the show, and frankly, the easiest way is to continue the spirit of the show, which is just to reach out to us at conferences. But we also run businesses as well, and you can support us by supporting a lot of the work that we do. You can support the work that I do through Visual Approach by visiting visualapproach.io, where we produce a lot of research and analysis, a lot of data visualizations.
From my side, obviously, I focus more on metals, so anything that's aircraft related, if you're looking for valuations, whether it's on aircraft engines, I'm happy to help with any of those types of projects. So we appreciate certainly the opportunities to work with all of you. And we certainly also appreciate just the fact that people are willing to listen to what we have to say and enjoy kind of our thoughts and takes on what we think is a fascinating industry. So thank you.
Okay, back to the show.
So Thomas, Max, thanks for being on the show with us. It's certainly great to have you on, as we've done with all of our other 25. How many guests we? 26, right? Because we had one duo.
We doubled up a few times.
Yeah. So as we did those guests, we'd love to actually find out how you guys got your start in aviation. Where did that passion come from? That's one of the things that we love about you guys, is that you're so passionate about what you do. And I'm sure that our listeners would love to hear kind of where that started. So I don't know, Max, do you want to kind of let us know how you started what you're doing?
That's very. Hi everyone. First of all, I try to be very short and concise in my answer, because I figured we're four guys on this podcast that all love aviation, and we usually can't stop talking about it. So I feel sorry for the listeners.
Right. So Max, your time's up. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Max.
This podcast usually lasts 45 minutes, now 3 hours 50. But anyway, so how did I get in aviation? It's very, very simple. I grew up in a little village in the Black Forest with 400 inhabitants, and I used to make the joke that there are more cows than people in that village, and it was really nothing going on except one thing. There were about 120 planes flying over it every day. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the 90s and nothing is going on, and you see those 120 planes flying into Zurich Airport every day, and you have everything there from Fokker 100s to MD-11s, that's sort of what catches your attention, right? You're there, and there's a lot of planes flying overhead and really low. So that's first thing that got me into aviation. Thought that's pretty cool. My mother says that was the second word I could say in in my life. First one was train, the second one was plane. So.
Well, that's
Oh,
funny.
oh,
That's
in
funny
that
because
order.
I didn't know about the train being first for you as well, because for me it started with buses. So
Oh, really? Yeah.
A
the story
bus.
goes that when my sister was born, when I was 2 years old, I knew all of the bus lines and all of the bus stops by heart in my hometown where I come from. And then I got bored of buses, and I switched to trains from there, and then I started to buy this train timetable for Switzerland. Then that was boring. Then I started to buy the train timetable for Germany because it's a bigger country and more trains. And then I went to the airport and started collecting timetables, and then it just went on from there. Because as soon as I was going global, essentially, when I was 5 years old, then who would care about local buses and trains anymore? Then it just went from that to.
We're glad you discovered planes. Otherwise, this would be called bus aviation today.
That's right. Yeah.
Time
Yeah,
on
it's
Rails. Welcome to the Time on Rails podcast.
I'm on rails. Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm trying to think. When I was 5, and I mean, here you are. You said you were 5, and you were looking at global timetables of airlines. Yeah. I don't think I was even. I was trying to. Probably still trying to put on my pants and trying to tie my shoes. That's basically that was my main goal.
No, 5, not 35, Garrett.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. I get those confused. That math it's a little bit tricky for me.
Just to say. Yeah.
I'm still into trains. So I mean,
Yeah.
I still get annoyed if the very amazing Croatian Railways change their schedule and my train gets cancelled and I can't take my train anymore and stuff like that. So there is lots. I'm still into trains. So it's not like I would have abandoned that altogether.
Just for everyone who is listening now, feels a bit under pressure that at the age of 2 he couldn't remember the local. Bus company's timetable and schedule. Don't feel let down. Just wanted to say I was a lot more normal. So until 5, I was probably just laying around in the garden watching planes because I couldn't walk back then. And the one thing that really got me into aviation and really sparked it, and I actually by coincidence the cleaning lady put it on my desk today, and I was been looking for it. It's not like I prepared it or so, but I'll hold it into the camera. In 1997, 24th of December, I flew with a McDonnell Douglas, with a McDonald's a logo jet, and they had no cockpit door. It was just today unheard of, but it only had a red curtain, and every kid, I was 10 years old by then, could come to the cockpit and say hi to the captain. I flew with it, and they gave me the certificate, and that's probably when I really thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to become a pilot, and then. Fortunately, at around 12, 13, I thought, just pilot is probably a bit boring. What else could I do?
So
that's when I ended up here.
Being pilot's so boring.
That realization.
He's still trying to become a pilot. But as one of our customers recently said, he's just a baby pilot for now because he's still trying to learn.
Yeah.
But if that realization came to you at the age of 12, you were probably 15 years ahead of me. Because I went all the way to the cockpit before I realized, this is boring.
Oh, you did that? Okay. Well, it's very simple. The story is shortly told. At 12, one guy let me ride on a jump seat, and I was sitting there, and I thought, okay, this is super cool. Takeoff and landing is so interesting, but then in between is this hour that's boring. I have a bit of ADHS, so sitting there still for 1 hour is very hard for me. So. And then I just thought, okay, what else could I do? Well, I still like planes. And I thought, oh, great, I'll just become airline CEO. What else,
Yeah, just like that. Yeah. Might as well just run the airline. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's amazing.
Max,
it was not too different for me. And then I remember that in 8th grade, my maths teacher told me, well, if you want to become an airline CEO, you might have to pay a bit more attention to math class, otherwise they will not work out. And then I met him again decades later on a train, still being a maths teacher. He was going somewhere on a field trip with school, and I told him, hey, you might not remember me, I'd never paid attention in math, but I built an airline revenue management system together with an operations research doctor, and it works just fine. So
I don't know. Looking back on the financial performance of the industry, I don't think maths are really the core of airline CEOs.
If I can add something here to make up for that statement, I finished high school in Germany and I sort of on paper I had the worst math exam in that year, and 3 years later I was the CFO of a regional airline. So I would
There you
say
go.
math is completely. You
What
don't
better
need that one.
qualifications?
That's right.
Perfect.
They're like, how many fingers am I holding up? Two? You're hired.
You're
You
in.
are hired. Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's-
As long as
that's
it's a greater number.
Just to be clear, that's about how I got that job. Yeah.
So I'm very interested in hearing the story. I know that a lot of things happened between age 5 and ch aviation, but it's really that path to starting ch aviation, how you two met each other, what path or what sequence of events took you down this path to where you are today.
Well, I mean, I was bored in high school, so in 1998, after
Maybe
class,
you should have paid more attention in math class. That's probably what you should
for
have been doing.
example, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to that. I mean, I never brought any school books home. I just left all of them at school. And I would go there shortly before class started and then pretend that I did homework. But yeah, I spent the afternoons in the computer room of our high school because I didn't have internet at home yet. And I was just bored, so I started writing articles about aviation in Switzerland and started to create profile pages of all of the airlines in Switzerland. So essentially I did everything that I did when I was 2 years old and I started in my village. I did the same thing again when I was 15 years old and I started a website and I started in my little home country, and then from there it grew and grew and grew and grew. I mean, one of the reasons why ch aviation is called ch aviation is that back then in 1998, kind of the Wix.com of the time, where you could create your own website for free with zero skill, was called GeoCities. Was later acquired by Yahoo. And on geocities.com, some other idiot already took Swiss aviation, so I couldn't call it Swiss aviation, so I had to call it ch aviation. So that's how the brand was created.
Wow.
So
Did you have
Branding
GeoCities on your
genius.
bingo card,
Yeah.
Eric?
What's that?
Did you have GeoCities on your podcast bingo card today of words that would be said?
Yeah, we
Because
should have.
so I did that as well. GeoCities way back in the day. There was a game. There was a computer game, a PC game called Airbucks. And if you've heard of it, you are awesome. If you haven't, it's an old MS
I
DOS
at least
game.
remember the name, yeah.
Yeah, you made an airline. It was like the first airline management simulation, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful, and I made a GeoCities page to see if I could get other people to play it, right? Because you could kind of pseudo do multiplayer. That's amazing.
Can I just say? Yeah, go ahead.
The story continues, and it gets even more hilarious. So the reason you asked why do Max and I know each other? So there was a guy in Germany called Martin who still works for us until today, who was complaining on a German internet forum about how bad another airline management simulation game was, whose name I really forgot.
I can tell you all of this. I can tell you all of this because I can relate so much to that story. Courtney, what you need to know about this is I don't know Airbox. Really, that's just where you see that you're older than me because you probably played it on Commodore 64, and I played
8,1, baby.
yeah. But what happened sort of is I had this. I wanted to become a pilot, right? And then this dream fell apart, and I was sort of really depressed because I wanted to do something in aviation, but I didn't know what to. And then in high school break in fall 2001 or so, I got a CD from a friend of mine, and it had a game on it called Airline Tycoon. That's the one that Thomas refers to. It was a management system in comic. Yeah, cartoony. And obviously, I mean, here's the difference between me and Thomas. So Thomas plays it for 10 minutes and thinks, oh, that game is stupid. I'll go and build my own game. I loved that game. I played it many, many months. And GeoCities was before my time. So what I did, I registered Airline Tycoon .de for Germany, and I created my own website about it as well, and I thought I could get German players to it. Was a great idea. Unfortunately, I ran into the same issue as Thomas, didn't know about copyright or anything, so the manufacturer almost sued me for having that website. But anyway, on that game, on that board, that they had a board about that game, and that's how Thomas and I actually met, because there was a guy Martin, who really works for us until today, who said that game is okay, but they are not taking care of it. I'm going to build a browser game where you can manage your own airline by yourself, and it's called Airline Sim. And well, Thomas, it's different level. That's where we met. Thomas was brought in, I think, to do the schedules or the airports database or something. I volunteered to become a moderator for the community, which was a job they gave me for 2 days and then they kicked me out again. But that's how Thomas and I met.
Yeah, I mean, essentially Max was fired by one of our software developers now from his volunteer role because he used his admin rights to cheat in the game to get advantages over other people that were playing.
I'll bet those reviews go well.
Yeah, that's something that you have on this guy forever.
But just to be clear, that was
Airline still runs today. I mean, it's still very.
And it was a great game. Like, I mean, if you're 12, 13, 14, and you want to sort of I really, that's what triggered me to think, okay, maybe I can become an airline manager, and it was really, I mean, it's still running today. I would, if anyone is interested and is not very knowledgeable about the industry, I would recommend play that game because you can make all these mistakes and you'll learn quickly. I mean, I remember I started my first airline there. You got some money in the game, you could buy planes, whatever, and I bought 2 DC-9 30s and 2 DC-10s, and I thought I'll do a feeder network out of Frankfurt. And then I realized, that's not how it works. So the airline went bust quite fast. And when on the process of going bust, I tried to kick out my competitors to save my airline. Didn't work. So they kicked me out completely. But that's how Thomas and I met. Yeah, practically. Besides that if you are interested in aviation in Switzerland back then, you would stumble across Thomas's page anyway. I've stumbled across it a couple of times before I actually met him then, thinking, that's the guy who runs CH, because literally there was no other website. If you wanted to know something about Swiss aviation, Zurich Airport, who flies where, and when, you would end up on Thomas's page.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, what today these kids have Instagram groups and WhatsApps and whatever.
We didn't have groups on Instagram.
Same version.
I don't know. I don't have Instagram actually. I'm too old.
Back then it was what? MySpace? GeoCities. Yeah. It was GeoCities.
Yeah, GeoCities. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Which I love how you think 2001 is like old.
This is why I hang out with Garrick. He makes me feel young.
Airliners Net Community Board.
Yes, well, that's still a thing.
It's still alive today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't go there. They all complain about how CH got so expensive and how it lost its soul, So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not soulless, but that's okay.
I know.
So this is a great segue, though, because this is the transition that I'm most interested in from, it's more a little bit more than a hobby, but from kind of that enthusiast site to a successful and highly profitable company. How did you make that transition? I mean, what were those intentional steps, kind of the inflection points that kind of moved CH in that direction?
Well, I mean, I was between jobs in 2008. I just quit a job that I had as a product management director for a US-based airline IT provider, and I was joining another one here in Thailand. So I was between jobs and spent about 1 month writing specifications of how I would like the more professional version of CH Aviation to be like. And then it still took several years to actually get that developed, because I think our development budget at the time was 13 hours a month. That's what we could afford paying Martin to build that. So it took a while to actually get that first version up and running. And then I think just around the same time, both Max and I had enough of what we were doing. I quit this airline IT subsidiary of Emirates in 2011, and Max quit Intersky, where I worked before as well, an Austrian regional airline, around the same time. And we
summer 2011. Yeah,
we more or less just decided that let's set up a company. Let's try to make this a paid hobby. The business plan really was Max and I will not work and do this properly for 6 months. Then he will make some money on the side. Then we're going to find a job again. And then the business plan went wrong.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't say that we immediately started. So we realized, this is going to be more successful than we thought. But it was not like we immediately figured out oh, this is going to be something we can live from. So I would say, when people ask me when did ch-aviation start, there's kind of these three dates. It's 1998 when I started as a hobby. It's 2012 when we set up a company, and it's probably 2015 when we started to take it really seriously and started running it like a company and not like a paid hobby. Because it still took a while for us to figure out, oh, this is actually going to be something that we can not only live from, but that can grow significantly. Would contest you on the highly profitable, because I don't think we are there yet. And
Max
we also,
would-
It's never
Max is
enough.
sales guy.
Never enough.
no. I mean, the way we work is very different, because we essentially look at reinvesting everything we get to keep up the momentum and to keep growing. So being profitable is not very high on my agenda. I actually don't know how profitable or not we were last year. It's not something that I care about. The only thing I care about is how much we can reinvest into new stuff.
I mean, Thomas always explains this very unemotionally. To add some meat to the bone, like so we met over Airline Sim. Then 2005, I joined, and by then, the beauty of CH was that since 1998, it sort of organically grew in news, data coverage, and whatever. So when we took it to the next level, we had sort of 10 years of hidden investments into it already, because when you're, to yourself, when you're in high school or you're a student, time is endless as long as you don't have to do your homework. There's always an excuse to do something different. So that's a bit what we did. So we could rely on that. And that helped us a lot, because in the end, what CH is completely bootstrapped, right? So it's us taking money, bringing it there, and there's never been an external investor. There's never been a banking loan or anything like that. It's literally, we went live, and for whatever reason, right from day one, but also because Thomas was running this CH newsletter that a lot of people knew, right from the day one, we had people subscribing and giving us money, and we took that money and just, as Thomas said, we just reinvested. I think first time we paid us real salaries was 2015 or something like that. And until then, we just took all the money, and it took us about 1 year. So when we started CH, I was quite optimistic on it, because I had worked in InterSky in aircraft financing, and I saw that you needed a lot of data for all of this. So I thought maybe, there is enough people that will buy these things that we could actually have a nice little business on the side. I mean, today it's almost 80 people, so I would have never imagined that we would have 80 people doing what we're doing here. But I thought maybe it's 3-4 people, and we went live, and I think we were charging 500 euros for a subscription a year, just for sort of the news, etc. And I did that. I lived practically in university, in the library building, sending out invoices and whatever, and we would send out 2-3 invoices a week, maybe. And I sat there and I thought, oh, this would be so cool if I would issue one of these invoices every day. Imagine, we could live from it. Today I would probably get a heart attack if we don't sell one invoice in the first 3 hours of a day. But it's sort of that sort of puts it into perspective. And then we just took that, and it took us about, when we launched, the idea was really, it would be cool to hire a journalist who would write news articles for us. And it took us about a year until we had enough sort of revenue accumulated to give it a trial for a couple of months. And then that's always how we did it. We sort of make, when that's really important to emphasize, and I tell our customers, when you give us the money, it's like we will make sure that most of this money goes actually back into the development of further development, because we don't have any other financing stream. And at the beginning that was a lot harder, because the limiting resource was really money. Today, I would actually say it's also access to brain power. That is it has sort of interchanged. But that's why Thomas is right when he says we don't really care about profitability. All we care about is that we have being Swiss, we have a very conservative outlook on life. We'll be very conservative in our planning. But all we care about is that there is enough, as we call it internally. It's not a joke, or so we call it play money, because if you turn your hobby into a business, it's still a lot of play around. So we call it play money. And then, I mean, our accountant usually sits there and she's like rolling eyes. But then we sit there and think, oh, we have more play money. We wanted to do accident incident data. Let's finally go and buy the data and build it and do these things. So I think that's still, when Thomas says it's not highly. I don't know it either. All I care is that we keep growing and we can keep investing. And I mean, obviously, if we would stop investing, it would probably be very highly profitable. But why?
Yeah, and I think that probably describes what you guys are doing probably the best. It really kind of puts everything into context. Most companies would call that research and development. You call it play money. I love that.
Well, I mean, to put it in context, I mean, there is 80 people right now, and more than 30 of them are just working on new stuff. So more than 30 people that we have in the company essentially are financed by what we call play money, because they are just working on new stuff we want to get done, and it's. I mean, that's quite a massive number for a company of our size, and that just shows what Sanya, Max, and I are interested in. But in the end of the day, it's not just a question of interest. I mean, that's how the company is going to keep growing as fast as it does, because we're making massive investments to make that happen. And yeah, if
we're lucky,
buy houses and boats and who knows what, we could do that, but we really have no desire to do that. What do we do with that? We have no external investor. We're not owned by a private equity company that wants to have this percentage number of revenue back every year, or one that is trying to build a nice story on why they should sell again in 3 years or something like that. So it's a very different outlook on life, but in the end of the day, yes, as Max said, as long as we're conservative and don't bet the house while we're playing, it's a very effective way of growing without having an external investor around.
But I mean, it sounds like it's all fun. I mean, we still have very heated discussions of what to do next. I mean, it's not like we sit there and we think, okay, that play money, let's just. I mean, you can be enthusiastic about some stuff, and you should never lose that part of it, but. Obviously, Thomas and I, we still sit there and we run the numbers and we say, okay, if we invest here, that gets us this product. If we go and sell that product, how much more are we going to make? And can we? That's actually how we prioritize. We do that stuff that we think we like and then the customer like, and what has the biggest return on investment, and we keep growing. So
get more play money.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Right.
Right.
What else is there?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
no, I know, and that to me that says so much about what you guys have created in terms of. Because your passion for it and your just desire to reinvest in it all the time, and from what I know of Thomas as well, right? I mean, whatever you invest in, you're going to make sure that you do it right? It's not just kind of like, oh, let's do this. Oh, it didn't really come out the way that we wanted, but that's okay. Let's just move on to the next thing. It's like I feel like every time you guys are looking at your next iteration of whatever you're going to do, it's going to be done right? And I think that is what kind of makes everybody that use your stuff appreciate what you do, because they know that it's not just going to be taken lightly of like, oh, we're just putting something out because that's the way the business works, right? And you have to put something out every 6 weeks or every whatever.
We didn't have. I think it's also we're planning to do that for the long run. So I don't plan to do anything else for the next 20 years. So why would I have a short-term planning horizon and stuff? So I think that's why if we do something, we want to do it right. And we sometimes, I think we didn't launch any new feature for more than a year because we wanted to get our new user interface right that we just launched last weekend.
We didn't do a new product for 3 years actually.
Yeah, but we didn't launch anything small either for about a year. And now we kind of have an avalanche of stuff coming that was all stuck behind that user interface launch. But that's just because we said let's rather do it right. And while we did that user interface relaunch, we did a lot of rework, I would say, almost on old stuff that we developed many years ago and made it more bulletproof and made it created lots of tests so that the software is better, and whatever time we took now to do that, that's the foundation for the next 10, 15 years. And the foundation for the last 15 years wasn't that great because, as I said, when we started that, we didn't have the budget to build a platform that would be what it is today. So we just invest in everything, assuming that we're going to be around here in 2044, still doing the same thing. And that's part of why everything is looked at differently than it is at other companies. But I would still, I mean, even though we do things very differently than others would, I still think we do that very seriously. So it's not like we just do something because it's fun. I mean, of course we do things because they're fun, but we run it like a serious business. But we just have a very different philosophy on how we invest.
Yeah, yeah. So during the intro, by the way, I touched on your education a little bit, which I thought was very interesting from the standpoint that the responses that I got from the fact that I put that in there. So I don't want to leave our listeners hanging, but I told them that you would let us know, and so Thomas, from your standpoint, right? You had a pretty good response as to why you got a degree from the University of St. Gallen. So I'll let you tell it, and then we'll let Max kind of talk about his university experience, which I think is fascinating. So Thomas, let our listeners know because I think it's great.
I mean, I finished my degree because my mother and my wife thought that I would have to finish it, because otherwise, what would I do in case ch-aviation wouldn't work out? But I mean, I only got my degree when I already was running ch-aviation and was the CEO and had I don't know how many employees. So it was utterly pointless to get that degree. So I agree with them that I was going to finish it, and then I would pick up the degree, but I would never open the envelope with the degree in it.
Is it still sealed?
Huh? It is still sealed. But some years later, we were running in an RFP for a government authority that wanted to have proof that that at least someone in senior management had C2 level English skills, and I was traveling, and the only way I could prove it is by asking the university to please send me a copy of my grades so that I could prove that at least one person in ch-aviation speaks good enough English. So that's the entire reason why I went to university. So it was A, to make my family happy, and B, to prove to some government authority that I speak English.
Great reasons right there.
All the best reasons.
Now Max, so you did not finish, right? You did not get a degree in university, but I think it's the reason why is great, right? I mean, please tell us.
Well, there is like, when I talk about my educational background, it's sort of a bit hairy in general. So it wasn't only university where I sort of never finished anything. I also really struggled through high school. I think I had to repeat class twice, and so that took a while. Partially because every time I went to school, these classrooms were sort of in direction of approach paths. So I was mainly staring out there watching airplanes. But I finally made that, and then I started working for the local airline in the summer break, and that was a big mistake. So I had inscribed for university, also St. Gallen by coincidence, and I started working for a local airline, and that was a mistake because in those you finish high school, it was really dragging on, you really wanted to go into aviation, and then you start working at literally, I finished high school. Next day, I started working there, and it was a small operator. They just let me do whatever I wanted, like not what I wanted, but I you look at out of the window, see planes, and out of a sudden, next day you are in front of the plane, and it's just great. And so these 2 months were not helpful either, because then I had to go to university, and it was pretty boring. So I kept battling through that, and then. I have a Swiss passport and I go to Swiss university, but we have mandatory military service. So at one point I had tried to avoid that, and then at one point they called me in. I didn't feel like, and so I went to my CEO back then, and he said, "Well, it's not a problem." Airline was based in the east of Austria, and he said, "It's not a problem. Why don't you move to Vienna, and I'll just make your home base Vienna, and you can just shuttle between the university and headquarters." On our 2 daily flights. And so I was 21, sorry. I was 21, and I was flying almost once a day between Vienna and Eastern Austria, and I loved that. And so I went to university in Austria. Um, and then we started. The airline was sold. I left the airline, and then I was at university, and that's when we came up to commercialize CH. So couldn't work at home. That was, before work from home was popular, so was very distracted there. So I just went to university, sat in the library, and did everything I had to do for CH in the library. And it's Austria, so it's a very socialist country. So they had very cheap food in the canteen. So that's the main reason why I stayed with university until CH was profitable, because I could go and have lunch for €2.50 a day, and sit in the library and issue invoices. And there was also no trouble, because my parents and my girlfriend back then, they all thought, oh, Max is in the university all day long. He's giving it all.
He's in the library. He's got to be studying every day.
Little did they know that he worked on a startup that had absolutely zero revenue, and they would probably be shit scared. And there's a funny story to that as well. Once we became profitable with CH, my student life ended, right, which was heavily subsidized by my mother. And then people would come up to my mother and say, so Max, what is he doing now? So he was at this airline, and then he was studying, and now he does this startup, what is it, And my mother would just say, because it's internet and you make, subscriptions or whatever. My mother would have no idea. So she would just tell them, I have no idea what he's doing, but at least I don't have to send him money anymore. So yeah, that's my educational background. So I have, Thomas, he's just bored. He doesn't know what else to do for the next 20 years. I'm just stuck. No degree, no nothing. I just can't quit.
Yeah, I know. You've done nothing. You've done nothing. Come on. When are you gonna start living your life? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's great. So I've got a question for both of you, right? When you think about the time frame, right? You ultimately, Thomas, like you started the CH stuff in '98, right? And then ultimately you didn't launch CH as a kind of a commercial platform until 2012. But then it took another 3 years for that to really materialize, and obviously then you are where you are today. So within that time frame, like, I think what have been some of the biggest challenges, because that's a pretty big time frame, right? So I'm sure things have changed drastically a lot for you guys to try to keep up with whatever you were trying to do. And so what were some of the challenges as you're kind of going through trying to create what you want to create and still dealing with the ever-changing environment?
Well, if you look at the company, at some point we had to make a decision on where we were going to hire a lot of people, because when we started, we just, as Max described it, we kind of winged it as we went along. So when we needed someone, we started to hire a contractor here that was working for us for 12 hours, and someone there that was working for us 40% and whatever. And at some point we realized that we have to do something and figure out where we're going to hire a lot of people. So at that time, we made the decision to invest in Zagreb in Croatia, where we have more than 50 people working for us now. I think that was kind of one game changer, that we were brave enough to say, let's go to a country different than where we have been so far. Figure out where's the best place to set that up. And we actually wanted to go to Lithuania, and then ended up in Croatia by chance. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges to overcome, on how can we make this scale, in a sense. From a data perspective, I think it's just, there is one challenge that never stops, which is if you're in the data as a service business, which is kind of what our business model is. We're not a software as a service provider really, but we're kind of a data as a service provider, information as a service provider. If you're in that business, one of the biggest challenges, and it really it will never stop the next 20 years either, is that you're essentially selling data that by definition is wrong, because it's impossible to get 100% of your data right. We have millions of data points in our fleet data. It's impossible this is 100% correct. So I think the key challenge there is that you never ever get tired of figuring out ways of how you can get the quality of the data up even more, because 100% right is completely but you're adding lots and lots of people, you're adding lots of processes, lots of automation, and whatever you do, you're always in danger of getting away further from the 100% rather than getting closer to it. And that's something that I just obsess about. So I think that's one thing that probably makes a massive difference, but it's a challenge that will just never go away. And I annoy everyone at ch-aviation and everyone at all of our third-party data vendors because I probably open most customers with all of them. But it's just something that I think is one of the key challenges if you're in that business. And if you can't overcome that, you're not going to get very far.
In regards to that and the data as a service, which is a relatively new term, right? SaaS has been around for a while, but really kind of identifying, the way I always would pitch it to investors who were interested in talking, the difference between software as a service and data as a service is the data should be a line item on the balance sheet, like it's an asset, like it actually sits there, it's yours, it's a value, and now that's become more of a well accepted term kind of in the industry. But in regards to CH, your approach to data, how do you kind of describe your competitive advantage when it comes to that? I mean, how do you position yourself to your customers?
I mean, I wouldn't say that we look at where are we relative to where are our competitors, because as I said, I mean, our fleet data is wrong, the fleet data of our competitors is wrong, so Serium's fleet data is wrong, Aviation Week's fleet data is wrong, Kappa's fleet data is wrong, CH Aviation's fleet data is wrong. Everyone's fleet data is wrong because you cannot get it right. So the art is to get this as little wrong as possible. And whenever customers will go row by row, aircraft by aircraft, field by field, and compare the data, you will find differences in the data. And there are things that others are doing better, there are things that we are doing better, but I just look at what we do and I try to make sure I do everything that is in my power to make sure that we have the least amount of issues with our data. But in the end of the day, all you can do is automate as much as you can, build as good enough relations with the airlines, with the lessors, with everyone else in the airline industry data ecosystem, and try to minimize the amount of issues that you have. But I think that's, since you asked about competitive advantages, I think that's one of the things that probably is just inherently different about us than it is about other vendors, because all the way from the top down, that's something that we care about very deeply because we are F geeks and data geeks and we want to get that stuff right. But it's as I said, an elusive goal. But I mean, what I hear from customers that have used our data and that are using other vendors' data, there are certain areas in our data sets where you can really feel that difference, and that's probably one of the USPs. But in the end of the day, it's just something that you need to live every day, and if you also live with the fact that people can find errors every day if they want to, because it's impossible to get it 100% right.
If I can add one thing here, obviously, to come back to your initial question about what were the challenges. Well, first of all, I really think the biggest hurdle for us was to get to the revenue to a level where it would self-sustain the company, and then sort of have the guts to overjump that next hurdle and to let go of a lot of things that you would do yourself. Just to put it into perspective, when we launched, it was 3-4 guys working on that thing. So until 2015, 2016. The fleet data on regional aircraft like Saabs, Fokkers, Dash 8 planes, whatever, I would maintain that myself. And they make jokes about it, that they still find my errors from back then when they work on these files today. But that's sort of what it is. At the beginning, Thomas, myself, the other guys, we would do all of that by ourselves. And then that's what I see is a hurdle for a lot of people to jump over at some point and say, okay, Thomas wrote all the news articles, but now we hire someone to write the news articles as Thomas would have written them. Someone is going to maintain Fokker 50 planes like Max would have done it, And so obviously, I sometimes make
Max would have done it.
Yeah, I was going to say
better. That's not hard, right? But what I wanted to say, I think that is the biggest hurdle. Once you've passed over that, don't get me wrong. Garrick I met first at an ISTAT, I think, and I used to go to every single ISTAT, and I used to go to all of the conferences. Whatever there was, I would go there myself and say, "Hi, I'm Max. Can I show you our system? And can we do this for you?" And whatever. And as the company grew bigger, it's now, as I said, it's now 80 people. So now there's a team of 17 in my team alone that just travel, and they go to ISTATs, and I have to trust them that they are as nice to Garrick as I used to be to him, hopefully, but
a lot nicer. They're so much nicer.
A lot nicer, right? But that's the big challenge. That's the big challenge. Like don't get me wrong. I sometimes sit here and I'm making sure everyone is coordinated, going everywhere, everything is fine. They have the stuff that they need to tell. But believe me, I would love to go to ISTATs myself. Just sit there, drink a beer with the guys, talk about aviation. But you sit there and you have to make sure that the entire organism sort of functions, and that is what I think is a big challenge as the company grows, as the company becomes bigger. How do you make sure you don't lose your soul? How do you make sure that the people, the guys who started it, the guys who live it, the guys who know every little screw in that, you could say, that plane. I know it's a big topic right now, but how do you make sure? How do you make sure that you are still so close to them to make sure they don't drill the bolts in the wrong way, and that's I think is the biggest challenge, to stay close and also be approachable. We went live with this new platform on the weekend. Everyone is there. If you book a demo and everyone is booked, you end up with Thomas, myself, whatever. Thomas and I, we read most of the emails that come in from customers. We read all of that still, and we're trying to be very close. And I think that's the big challenge, that you have to accept this thing. You have to let go. You have to trust your people that they will do it well enough by themselves. And you just have to stay engaged. And that's what I see with a lot of companies, that the founders at some point get tired, and then they sort of retreat, and that's from where it sort of goes sideways, So I think that's the biggest challenge, to sum it up.
Yeah.
But if you say we read almost every email that comes in from a customer, that's true. Although I guess I would call it skim reading. But I had a conversation with another founder in the airline industry data space recently, and one of the things we agreed on that was kind of hard, as the companies were growing really fast, is I think you need to get to the point where you get used to the fact that you can't win all battles. So there are things that are going wrong within ch-aviation that I know are going wrong, but they are just not a priority at the moment. I just need to live with the fact that it's not a priority, and I will maybe send a quick one-liner email and hope that makes a difference. And if they ignore that, and I have other priorities, then I just need to live with the fact that I've lost that battle, and I cannot, you cannot run everything. And I've seen that in the past in companies where I was working, and I was always, with one exception, where Emirates acquired a company that had around 40 people at the time here in Bangkok. And I went from number 2 in a company to 65,312 or whatever. I've always only worked for small companies, and in small companies it happens quite often that founders, CEOs cannot let go, want to control everything by themselves, want to make all of the decisions. I cannot make all of the decisions that happen at ch-aviation. So it was very important that I knew from my past experience of having been in a lot of these small companies that the only way we're going to succeed is if I'm going to find lots of smart people that are going to make the decisions, because I cannot make all of these decisions. So
he tried to find all these smart people, and he ended up with me.
You better be lucky than good.
You were part of the inventory at the beginning already. That was kind of
yeah.
He was an inventory expense.
I'm one of these one-liners in accounting.
That's right. Hey, what's this Max Oldorf line? What is that? Don't worry about it. It's already, he's already been depreciated. We're good. It's just on there.
He's fully depreciated.
We just can't get out of the lease.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
I can't help but listen to that. And Garrick, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. What they're describing, frankly, are the challenges we have, right? Like they got past that. These are
we
some of the
can't.
same.
But if I make it makes you feel better. Just so you know, you climb one mountain, then you realize, the mountain after that is even higher. So, just keep climbing.
Yeah, so I'll just get a boat.
Yeah,
just a boat. Yeah, that's right. I'll just go to the beach. Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, I totally understand the whole feeling like you can trust somebody else enough to let go of those responsibilities, right? Which, as you say, it's a big challenge for so many, heads of companies that, and even I haven't had any employees, right? So for me, it's it hasn't been a challenge. But you do think about if it's something that I do need to do at some point, how would I be able to do that? Right? How would I be as a boss, or how would I be as a person that would trust somebody else to do it right? Yeah.
I didn't say anything. I don't know. What are you laughing?
Thanks, Courtney. Yeah. I mean, I usually find you talk about finding other smart people to work with. I'm still looking. I mean, I've got Courtney on the sidelines, but I'm still looking for smart people to work with. Not smart. Yeah. He's got a lot of baggage.
His math is. Yeah.
Let's face it.
Math,
he thought I was a girl. He's like, this would be cool, and he's like,
Yeah, I know. I got the email. I was like, oh yeah, she sounds nice. Yeah, and then I was like, oh god, yeah.
Sold a bunch of airplanes that way. Don't knock it.
That's true. So one question I have. So when you guys, because I'm sure that probably both of you probably get requests from clients all the time to say, hey, you know what, this is great. You guys should also do this, or you should look at that, or you should improve that. I mean, right? That's
conference. Why don't you have a conference?
Oh, that's a
you
whole
should do a conference.
Yeah,
but it's all these requests.
Yeah, right. So how do you prioritize? Because I'm sure that you do have comments that come in where you're like, oh, that's an interesting thought. Like we should look at that, right? But so how do you prioritize to be able to say, let's focus on this. That's sort of the decent idea versus no, we just can't spend any time on this, right? So how does that work for you? Because it's got to be constant that you guys are looking at that.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways of how we looked at. So we also have an idea portal where people can submit their own ideas and vote on them and so on. And that obviously has a big impact on how we prioritize things. So if we see that something is trending and lots of people would like to have it, it's different than if a single person comes and has a great idea at a conference and says, why don't you do that? But I think it also always depends a bit on the context. So that there have been things where someone had a great idea and said, hey, why don't you do that? And we did it within the next 2 or 3 weeks because we were working on something in that area anyway, software development wise or data research wise, and it made perfect sense to incorporate that into what we do. Generally speaking, we plan all of these things with a relatively long-term horizon, as I said. So we also have a product roadmap that is more or less set in stone, where we agreed on what we would like to get done the next couple of years, and we diligently implement that, going from one step to the next, to the next, to the next, because we know what we would like to get done. But then, as we go along, if a great idea pops up at the time where it fits in very nicely, we'll jump at it. If something repeats and we hear it many, many times, we sometimes have very heated discussions, as Max said, on should we now change our roadmap because we have heard 18 times that it would be great if you could track bananas in ch-aviation as well.
If you could track, no. I mean, one thing that came up, I remember that vividly. COVID hit. And out of a sudden, everyone was talking about cargo and underbelly capacity on planes, and can you track that and whatever. It was a very heated discussion here. Should we do that or not? And I'm so glad we didn't, because by the time we would have had that data, COVID was over and no one cared about it anymore. So.
And underbelly capacity, I got all these requests, the same type of request. What is underbelly capacity? How much is really there? I mean, it's dependent upon how many people are riding up top, right? I mean, it's ephemeral.
Depending on the weather on the day of ops.
Of course, payload range, all of that. Yeah.
How good the union negotiated crew rest compartments and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is something that would be very interesting to do, and it's still something that we have on the backlog of stuff that we would like to have. I mean, there's a lot of things I would like to have. I mean, I when I walk around New York City and I see helicopters flying overhead, I am annoyed that I don't have helicopter data yet, and I'm obsessed about the fact that I want to have that. So it's a lot of things that we would like to have, and we have to prioritize, because even though we have a lot of resources now to invest, there's always a resource constraint, because you could always do another 20 things. So we try to religiously follow what we have planned and do it in the order in which we have planned it. And then I think the discussion always is, this is a really amazing idea, should we change the roadmap because of that? And typically it is, no, let's not do that. Let's first finish what we wanted to finish. And so far that worked very well for us, because I mean, our roadmap is pretty much driven by what we have heard from our customers over the last 12 years. It's not driven by these are the things we think would be great. It's driven by, this is what we have heard from our customers, and this is how we want to incorporate that into what we do at ch-aviation and how to make it great. But there is things that we did that customers haven't explicitly told us that's how I want to get it done. But we like, one vision that I have, for example, is that's what we're working towards. We're still not 100% there yet, but I would like to get to the point where one of Max's people that is meeting Garrick for the first time would be able to ask Garrick, hey Garrick, what's your target market? And Garrick would be able to say, well, that's my target market. And then you kind of define your bubble within ch-aviation of what you're interested in. And then throughout the entire web application, everything will be immediately customized just to whatever one-liner Garrick said. And so that's kind of the overall product vision of where I would like to get to. And to do that, we're doing a lot of iterative steps as we implement the roadmap. So you can get news alerts that are targeted just to what you said. I asked lots of customers how they define that over the years, and they didn't know why I asked them. But I asked them because I wanted to build all of the features, all of the filters to be able to create that bubble for yourself. So if you're the Asia Pacific sales guy for a certain company, and your definition of Asia Pacific is different than someone else's definition of Asia Pacific, you can set up that bubble. And so in many cases it's kind of us having a vision and then listening to customers on how to implement that vision. They don't necessarily need to know how we plan to get there, but they need to help us.
But also, to be very honest here, as Thomas knew his bus line when he was 2 years old, it's not like we didn't learn from our mistakes there. And I think that's really important as well, that you sort of stay honest to yourself, and if you take a wrong direction, you sort of try to correct it. We had to get where we are now, that we are really coming up product roadmap, and we follow through with it. We also had things at the beginning where we just were taking wrong directions, and then every time one day I came around and said, I think we should really have a job board where we sell job advertisements, and we launched that. It was big failure, and then we learned from that, and we said, okay, next time let's be smarter on these things. So it's not like in our history we haven't made these mistakes. I think that's always, don't be discouraged, do something, just be honest to yourself. It doesn't work, scrap it, start from scratch again, and try to learn from it so you don't make that mistake again. I think that's where we got there quite nicely, and just make that decision. Does it make sense to do that now? Yes or no? I mean, there's plenty of things that I know if we would do them, revenue would probably shoot up, but they just don't fit the roadmap right now. So let's do them later.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, I think it's one of the benefits of being a smaller company, right? That's nimble and flexible, because I know from, coordinating with as just being one man shows, right? There's so many times where you're like, oh, you know what do you think about this? And we're like, oh, that sounds cool. We should try to do that. And then you put something together and you present it to some clients and like, oh, that's great. And you're like, great. Would you pay for it? No. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's really cool,
worse.
but I wouldn't spend money to subscribe to it. And you're like, okay, well then, but you try it again, right?
But just to be honest, that's still even. I mean, we're considerably more mature these days, but still, we're gonna launch new modules and features and data sets and whatever. And I mean, you have an idea; it could be a cool product or not, but still, there is a thrill. You'll go live with it, and then that's when it's game day, and that's when you figure out, okay, customers actually like it or not.
Yeah, well, and you have to do that, right?
It's just impossible. I mean, we try to get it as right as possible, as correct as possible, but the day will come where we will have another data set or whatever, just because it's in the nature of things, where we think it's the next big thing, and we end up with the Google glasses,
Yeah, been there. And the worst, the worst way that plays out. I mean, Garrick, the scenario you played out is we kind of have a good idea and we see who's interested. The worst way that plays out is we have people come to us. I mean, this is dangerous, especially with limited time that we have. They will come to us and say, "Hey, this sounds great. Like, I would love this. I would pay for this. I've had this happen. I would pay a lot for this." Okay, we build it. You ready? Yeah, no. No.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I mean, but just to be clear, that's exactly how we did it at the very beginning. I mean, one of the things why we just had to grow. I mean, this decision, if we hire people and we go somewhere and we open something up, it was sort of taken out of our hand because we had all these great ideas, and Thomas and myself, we walked around, and then the first big project where we just had to jump was that's one thing that came out of university. I had a friend at university who had a friend. Listen to this. It's a really cool story. Big 6-digit contract. First one we got in data was I had a friend at university who was not at university like me, so we were hanging out elsewhere and in library. That's where I met him. And then he went to do something else because he was kicked out of university. Anyway, long story short, he ended up in this new university where he was at. He ended up with a guy who worked for a really big hospitality company in the US, and that guy told him, I work on what's the coincidence? He said, I work on airline sales for that hospitality company now, and it would be so cool if I would have data on where airlines go into overnight and how many crews stay at a certain destination at a certain date. And that guy says, I have no idea, but you know what? I have a friend who does something like this now. I connect you. And that's how we started talking about that, and Thomas, I connected, and then Thomas went there and said, "Oh, I think we can build something, but it will cost you that much." And we had a lot of these things where he said, I think we can do something. We think we can do something, but it will cost you that much. And usually you would never hear from them again. And these guys just said, "Okay, yeah, cool. Can you come to Paris and show it to us?" We went there. Couple of months later, here's the money. Start building. And then that was 2014, I think, 2013, 2014, and then. That's sort of, okay, now we have to do it. And that's my advice to everyone. If someone comes to you and he says, "Oh, this is a great idea. Can you do this? Can you do that? Whatever." Try to have them to put real money on the table quite fast. If they do that, okay, that's great. Yeah. Let's go. If they don't do that, I mean, don't get me wrong, but I'm doing data sales now for 12 years. There is still guys out there that I'm talking to for 10 years that want to do something, never seen any money, never seen any contract.
Yeah.
I say hi to them, I like them a lot, but you just, 5 minutes of my time, then I have to go,
So we see the same thing on the subscription side, and Garrick and I have talked ad nauseum about this to each other, where we'll go to somebody, we'll be like, "Hey, look, so we have this subscription contrarian analysis insights comes across all the time, all these data visualizations, everything." They say, "Look, it's too much for our subscription budget, but do you do advisory work?" "Yeah." "How much is that?" "It's 10 times as expensive." Like, great. We would like that. I'm like, wait, like, okay.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things where you need to be careful. Where you need to be careful about, because I mean, we at the beginning when we launched ch-aviation, we thought, okay, we're going to do news, data, and consultancy work, and in a sense, consultancy work is great, except it's a revenue management issue. There is, if you're in the consultancy business, you essentially on Tuesday morning you could charge 10,000 euros an hour. You would still sell yourself. On Friday afternoon you might charge €1.50, and no one wants to have your consultancy hours. So it's something that is very very cyclical, and that is very difficult to plan. If you're just running that on the side. If you're a consultancy company, that's a different thing. Then that's your day-to-day business, and that's what you do. But if you think you can do some consultancy on the side, that might be a great idea to start a business, because the consultancy on the side will pay for the ideas that you have that you want to implement. But at some point, you just have to say, no, we are not doing consultancy work anymore, because
And
if you're
that's a good point, actually.
that's the time that is going to go away from building a product, from selling that product, from making the company scale, because the founders are the ones that are doing that consultancy work in most cases at the beginning. And it was the same for us. And at some point we said, okay, we're done with it. No more consultancy work from today
Okay,
onwards.
hold on. I need to text all my clients. Give me a second here. Thomas said, no more consultancy work.
Last round. But it's true what Thomas said. I mean, we did that upon probably 2014. We used the consultancy money to sort of fuel our business. But the moment we gradually reduced it, and the moment we didn't need it anymore, we cut it. Very important point here. Yeah, because as Thomas said, every minute you spend on consultancy work, advisory work, you can't spend on your product, and subscription is a lot more scalable on that from that perspective. If you have a good enough product that your subscribers come again and come again and come again,
Yeah, no, isn't that's very valid, right? I wonder who told you that, Courtney, like over and over again, that you should have a subscription business, because the consultancy work is just, some people just, they get it, some others don't, but that's all right.
Yeah, you got these parasites living with you. They want to be paid, fed and housed. And
I mean, to be honest, if you look at yourself, Courtney, I mean, yeah, if Visual Approach goes wrong, do you really think that you're not going to find work again with the experience that you have? I mean, come on. It's just...
Is he offering me a job, Gary?
No.
I'm in. Listen,
No,
I
I'm
can
not.
do what Max does way better.
You know how long I've been telling Thomas to find someone who is better than me. It's right time, right place.
You heard it here first, folks. The Time Limit Podcast.
I do not. It's a very.
Wait, I'm gonna start collecting my safety cards so I can move out here.
just clean your stuff out, Max. Yeah, it's why I'm. Look, I said this before we started recording. I think there is a very real difference between. Clearly, there's a difference between how ch-aviation operates and the other providers in the space, how you operate. But I think that translates into competitive advantage. And I think it's a major competitive advantage. The reason why you do what you do, and don't correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why you do what you do is because it's really kind of cool. Like, you can do it a little bit better. And each time you can do it a little bit better. It's not, hey, we need to build this up so that we can sell it, make it look pretty to the private equity firm. And I think that really does translate.
No,
I mean, one thing.
That's what it is. I mean, there's a level of self-fulfillment involved in what we're doing at the moment. But as I said before, I think many people could start businesses like that if they would have the guts to, and if they wouldn't be afraid of failing. But a lot of people are afraid of failing. They're sitting in their corporate jobs. They tell me how much they hate it and how they don't like doing this and how they don't like doing that and how they don't like doing whatever. But they really like the paycheck and the security that comes with it. But they could do the same thing. They could quit. They could work half the time doing that consultancy work that I said they should stop doing at some point. Spend the other half of their time building up what they want to build up, and then live happily ever after and do what they would like to do, as opposed to what they are doing so that they get the paycheck. And
but to be fully,
you don't know if it works.
But to be fully honest here, I think there was also it's a different situation that we were in, because I think I see it now. It's not like what Thomas says, that people quit their corporate jobs to do their own thing. I've actually seen this out of, I don't know, I'm not sure how it was with you, Courtney, but I've seen it with a couple of guys that had these COVID golden parachutes and then thought, okay, cool, I'll get a year's salary. Let me just finally tried myself. I have this 1 year of, and we've actually have a couple of guys that sort of started that and needed data, and so we work with them, right? But I think one major issue, it's not an issue, but it's just everyone writes his own story. So I wouldn't recommend to anyone to copy our story, because now it's fun to talk about it, but it wasn't, it was still painful, very painful, and very it needed a lot of stamina, because if you let's make an assumption, you get 100K in a golden parachute, back then when we started the CH, and I lived out of the library of university, that 100K with that lifestyle I had back then, and I have to some extent today, that would have lasted 6, 7, 8 years, and that's actually what it was. I think my budget, I have to look it up. I still have an Excel sheet back then. I think I had a girlfriend, so it was a double income household, but it was probably, I contributed 1,000, 100, 200 euros or so, and that's, when you're a student, that's just what you live off. I've been 23, 24, and it's like good money, and Ryanair would be flying me wherever I wanted, but if you're having, as you said, you have kids, you have a wife, you have to sustain it. That 100K obviously lasts maybe a year, so you have to, whatever you do, you sort of need to make sure that you start gaining traction very fast. And that's one thing that I also see a lot, is people go there and they start developing something, and then they sort of die in beauty. And while the real one thing, I think that's what we got right after first 2-3 years weren't that great, but then after year 3, sort of, we realized, okay, whatever we want to do, it all falls down to having good sales and good revenue, and that's what it is. You have to get in revenue from whatever business you have there. And it's not consultancy business. You have to make sure you really get revenue in, and if you don't make revenue, then you have a bad product. You need to fix that product. Or not a bad. You don't have a bad product, but you have a sort of a market fit problem here. But it's really coming down to revenue. You need to get the revenue in to fuel everything else. Unless you have investors that give you money and you can burn through it for the next 5 years, but that dilutes your shares, so not real fun either.
But I think what you just said is critical. Like I think that's in large part a secret to your success, right? So. Let's be frank. Why was Thomas successful? Did you hear him talk about bus schedules, right? Like, clearly, he's going to be successful. But Max, the balance, no, and truly, this is very true. The balance you bring on the revenue side, which is challenging, right? Because I met I met Thomas for barbecue. I had a great time. Like, we just nerded out for 2 hours or whatever, eating barbecue. So I tend in that direction. And yet the struggle, the balance that's needed for that revenue and that sales, I think is wholly underappreciated. And is one of the bigger differentiators.
Just to be clear here, Thomas is my best sales guy. Because he's nerding away, you just put him with someone in a room and he just nerds away, and then after that everyone is like, oh yeah, you know what?
Right, but that's because Thomas isn't selling the product, right? He's just talking about the product, and that's the big difference.
It's different,
right? He's not marketing, kind of like pushing hard, right? He's just talking about what he loves to talk about, and that's a big difference.
One of the best compliments I ever got for my way of selling stuff was. From a friend of mine who's now running an IT nearshoring company, and he was previously really, really senior guy at Swiss in Switzerland. That was also very heavily involved in the selection process for a reservation system at Edelweiss Air, which is their leisure sister carrier. And he told me
the better Swiss. Didn't say that.
He told me the reason Edelweiss was really impressed by the reservation system I tried to sell him was that I was myself and my boss, who was there with me at the time for a full day doing a demonstration to them, we were the only people that said no all the time. Can you do this? No, we can't do that. Why don't you do it like this? Can you do this? No, we don't want to do that. Can you do this? No, we don't want to do that. So I think if you're selling airline reservation systems to an airline, you're essentially selling them a heart transplantation. You say, don't worry, your millions of revenue will be
Courtney,
totally
why are
fine.
you so smiling when he said heart transplantation?
No, because the reservation system is the core of the airline. Without it, nothing happens. Yeah, I totally get that.
I think it's just key that if you sell something, you're brutally honest about what you can and what you can't do. And and I mean, I have made mistakes like this as well, where I underestimated how long it will take us to do something, and then I said something that I probably should not have said in a sales conversation. But it's very important to be brutally honest about what you can and what you can't do. And because in a sense, you're always, no matter what you're selling, it's a lot better if you're very honest and open about what you're doing, and whether you can help with a problem or not. I've sent customers to my biggest competitor saying, sorry, can't help you. There's only two options. You either talk to these or you talk to that guy. I don't care. If someone, I just have an honest conversation with everyone that I talk to, and I try to help them solve their problem. And if that means that I sell a subscription for Cirium, so be it. I think it's just, in the end of the day, people believe you if you tell them, the truth, and they will figure out that you tell them the truth if you are the way you are. And if that means I'm nerding away on the way, so be it. But in the end of the day, I think the key thing is that people believe you, that you're delivering what you're saying, and that's what I've learned selling heart transplantations in airline IT, and I think that's why people probably trust me if I tell them something after a couple of minutes, because they realize I'm not there to sell something. I'm there to see if I can help them. If I can help them, great. If not, so be it. And I think that's how you should approach any sales situation. Because if you're just trying to push something in someone's direction for no apparent reason, it doesn't make any sense.
And then, so on the other side of that, you've got Max. That's the guy that always sells everything all the time? Is that, and then, you then kind of come meet in the middle? Is that why you guys work so well?
No, it's totally not like. I mean, yeah, one of the reasons why things work so well is that we love to argue with each other in a very amicable way. I mean, I don't yell as much as Max and Sanya yell at each other, but they yell at each other several times a month, and then everyone hugs and kisses. And
so for those who don't know, Sanya is our COO. And there's sort of, when people join this company, they get to join first meetings where Max and Sanya sit in. People they sort of get a pre-warning and say, hey, things between Sanya and Max can get very heated, but they get heated for about 8 years now, and literally it's yelling at each other, and then we make friends again. So. But I think it's really important, and that's not in a bad way. You just see that everyone is very passionate about it. But to come back to what Thomas said, I think that really is. I always tell our guys, we're back to consultancy with jokes here, but I always tell them you're sort of more when you go somewhere, you're more a consultant than a sales guy, because if you don't understand what they're struggling with and how you can actually help them, it is really pointless to waste their time and your time. So better, and be honest, as Thomas said, just tell them, look, I can't help you with values. Go to Garrick. I really can't.
No, but I think the other thing that is, since we talk about how revenue is important, I mean, one of the things that annoyed me in my past life is I've worked with a lot of salespeople that were not very well organized. So if you are, let's say your first name is Courtney and you're selling CRJ airplanes, I know you've done that. It's not like it's terribly hard to figure out who you should sell to, because right. I mean, could now do an advertising spot and say you could buy data or whatever, but it's something that you could approach in a very systematic way. And one of the things that always annoyed me like crazy, because I'm a very systematic person and I'm a data geek, so I want to have data on everything. I also want to have data on who all of my customers potentially could be. One thing that always annoyed me with the way how sales forces worked is that I thought it was always a lot of. I'm trying to find a politically correct word.
Golfing.
It wasn't golfing, but it was very opportunistic
Golfing.
behavior of salespeople. So they would run after this one airline in Malaysia, and then after this airline there, and they would just whatever randomly came their way, they would run after, or wherever they had a list of people that they knew from the past, they would call them up, but no one would systematically say, this is exactly who I can run after, and now let's do that. So I spent a lot of time with Max the last couple of years making sure that we know who we are a good fit for and who we aren't. Because if you spend a lot of time chasing the wrong customers for your business, doesn't help you. You can scale your sales force from 1 to 27 people. It will not work because you have then 27 people running after the wrong people.
Wasting a lot of energy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's key that you approach sales in the same systematic way as you approach data research, because they are very interconnected in a sense. Especially if you're selling something that has a relatively low cost compared to what I said before, selling airplanes or selling a reservation system or whatever. What we're selling is a subscription that can be relatively cheap, and if you need lots of data, it's significantly more expensive. But we're selling something that is relatively easy to sell in comparison to multi-million investment. So you need to be very systematic about what you're doing, and so that's why I like to be heavily involved in sales, because I would like for things to be done in a very systematic way.
That's been probably one of my biggest learnings. So I was in sales at Bombardier, but I hated sales. I was a marketing guy. So give me data and I'll tell a story with it. On the sales side was more what you're talking about, but like you said, I mean, there are only so many airlines. You had accounts and you managed the accounts. Then as you expand beyond that, putting a systemic process to sales. Look, there's a reason Salesforce is now one of the largest companies in the world. It's because they're doing what you're talking about. No, I don't use Salesforce because I'm not going to pay them that much. But putting that systemic kind of sales process in place is a skill set, right? It requires, and it's changing constantly with all the different email rules and how you reach out and the data that's available to track, and just LinkedIn and what a tool that is.
Yeah, but changing. Can I say something there? That's something I see all the time as well. That people, it's probably the skiing syndrome. People want to go and ski, and the first thing they do is they buy the best equipment they have. They obsess about what to wear and how to do it and whatever, instead of just borrow some cheap ski, go to the slopes, and actually figure out, just do it, And that's what I see all the time. Like, people they track if the email was opened and if this was done and analytics here and whatever. It's a lot easier. And you don't have to have a Salesforce, have an Excel file. Start with that first until it falls apart. It's getting too big. But just start there. Look, what's my addressable market? Sort it by whatever size you think makes most sense for you. Sort it, start from the top, go to the bottom, and then expand it to the next market and the next market and the next market. And you can do that very relatively cheaply. Emails, Excel, LinkedIn. It's practically all you need. And on top of that, you have a good product that people can find. And especially at the beginning, you'll first sell to your friends. And if you have a good product, your friends will tell their friends. And that's how you grow. And then from there, you take it to more people and more people and more people. And it's just, don't obsess. I see that all the time. Oh, before I start, but I have to set up this and I have to do this. Just start. And don't get sidetracked, And,
Courtney. Don't get sidetracked.
Find that one spot and then just hit it and hit it
Yeah.
and hit it and hit it and hit it again.
Could you stop doing advertising for Turkish airline IT providers?
Yes. Hit IT, for those who don't know.
Hit IT, yeah.
It's big provider.
So,
Relatively.
when we and obviously, a lot of the stuff that you guys do is news focused, right? And I think, Max, you touched on that in, I think, one of your comments on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. But in the environment where, there's literally so much news, right? And whether it's good news or fake news or marketing, there's so much of it, right? So how, from that standpoint, right, how do you guys look at the news that you provide and try to kind of stay true to what you intended to be, and how do you keep it relevant, right? So that ultimately your users look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's informative. That's not just
guidelines."
You know what? I read that from like 10 other people. Like this, it's not really news anymore. So how do you keep that whole kind of going?
As Max said, guidelines. So what we do today is still the same as what we agreed to. I don't know.
12 years ago, right?
Yeah, it must have been pretty much at the beginning and before we launched ch-aviation. So we defined what we want to write about and what we don't want to write about. So we defined what kind of fleet transactions are we writing about, which ones are we not, what kind of airline
what is newsworthy, yeah.
openings we write about, what we don't. And then the approach that we took is that we will write about airline fleet transactions, no matter if it's American Airlines or if it is just mentioning them because I'm going to interview them next week myself, or if it's Siam Seaplane that has a single aircraft. So we write about. We want to write about every single operator, no matter how big or small, in every country. That means if you go on ch-aviation, because I was there earlier this year already. If you go on ch-aviation, last year we wrote 65 news articles about Nepal, because we treat 3 airlines and Sita Air and Summit Air the exact same way we treat American Airlines. If there is something going on American Airlines that falls into the category of what we consider this is something that we cover, we write about it. If the same happened to 3 airlines in Nepal, we write about it. And by doing that, we essentially created, in a sense, our news coverage almost is like data, because on every single carrier in the world, you will have very systematic news coverage, and we agree on what is in or what is out. So if we were to now enter some other part of the industry and start writing about it, I'm going to intentionally take something that we have no immediate plans to do. But let's say if we my past is in airline reservation systems. If we would start writing about airline IT, we would do the same thing. We would sit down and define this is what we want to write about, and then our aim will be to get to 100% coverage of that. Not just what is sent to us through press releases, not just what is very publicly spoken about, but we would want to write about every single airline IT decision that is made at every airline on what system they pick or whatever. So I think that's a very different approach to the approach that other publishers are taking, where they're essentially trying to write either what they perceive as being most relevant because it's the biggest carriers in the world, or writing the things that are easiest because it's served to them on a silver platter, and it creates the most revenue really fast because you have lots of content that is driven based on what it.
Or to be sorry, Thomas, and to be very plain honest here, they will also write whatever is paid the best in terms of free flights, big advertisement, customer, whatever,
or clicks, right? Or advertising.
Or clicks, yeah,
right?
clicks. Yeah. But I mean, I don't have a, that's where I don't have such a big problem.
Different business models.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a different business model. But it's just for us, we have the big benefit that we have is that our news product is 100% self-sustainable because we have subscribers that fortunately pay us money, so we can run this completely independent news desk. But I don't per se. I know you hate them like nothing else, those clickbait guys. But in the end, it's just another business model. And if it's a business model that works, I have no problem with that. I'm sort of. To understand to understand that philosophy on it is you need to see where we come from. We're both no journalists, so we don't have this. There is a lot of this, let's say, frustration within the journalistic profession about clickbait and how that sort of ruined real journalism and whatever. So I think these models are legit, but you have to disclose them, and
Yes.
you have to sort of stay true to yourself. I mean, the worst thing is clickbait is fine, because you understand. Okay, this is a clickbait news portal quite fast. What I really can't stand is when it's a news portal that sort of tries to be legit and serious, but then mixes a lot of sort of paid for influenced content into it that is not marked. There's nothing bad about having paid content, whatever, as long as it is properly disclosed. But if you run a news portal that is sort of owned by someone, and that content from that group always flows back into that news portal, and it's not marked properly, then it really gets borderline of what I think is ethically okay. Or if you have all these articles about the great new business class or the new delivery of whatever plane, and it's not disclosed. Hey, we were invited by that airline to go there. They paid for the hotel. They paid for the flight. This business class review is not. This business class review was sponsored by the airline. If you don't disclose that, and you're just there and you try to be, I'm this serious journalist or a serious news portal or whatever, and you don't disclose that, that just annoys me like nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But per se, no problem with clickbait or whatever. If it pays if you are running your own news portal and that's how you make it work, and it's like Boulevard magazines. I love to read them because they're true to themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean the true
tabloids. Yeah.
The true meaning of clickbait is you're presenting something different than what they get when they click on it, right? Which is different than like any blog or right, all good reasons. Like all content has value to some extent. I think it's the underhanded nature of it. I think that's a big part of it. On the media side, what little time I spent working with Ostrauer just gave me a view into that industry. That was like, wow. The people reaching out, hey, you should write this. Hey, can you do this? We'll pay for you to come here and do this and that. And John's the best of the best, right? And of course, he's. He'll probably kill me for saying this, but I wouldn't even really classify John in the news. He's not news. He's more like the deep, in-depth stuff. Like he'll write about it when he knows what's going on, not just, hey, this happened. And then people kind of guess. He waits till he knows what's going on. But like there really is that influence. It gets then to the next question of, and this comes up in all industries all the time. I get this question from clients. Is it better to be good or first and loudest? And the obvious answer there is you want to be good. But you kind of miss the second part. There's value in that, right? The two aren't mutually exclusive, right?
No, they aren't. But I mean, in a sense, it's a question of what your business model is. You've just mentioned John Oster, who I have a lot of respect for what the work that he does. But like we specifically decided that we want to be a news organization and that we want to be in the news business, and that there is certain things we want to write about and others that we don't. So essentially, we're doing two things. One is we do news articles and we do airline interviews. These are the only two things that we do. We decided not to write features and not to do this in-depth analysis that John is doing, for example. And again, that's. I think the key thing there is that you decide that this is my business model and that's what I focus on and I want to do that really well. And yes, I am annoyed sometimes about the fact that our lead times might be a bit longer than others, but then I think it's important for our customers that if Delta is ordering A350-1000s, that we report about that because they need to get that from us too. But I assume if you would ask all of our customers, do you have a problem with the fact that ch-aviation is 4 hours or sometimes, and I don't like that, 12 hours late reporting that Delta A350-1000 story, and instead you get 20 exclusive stories per day from countries where it's difficult to source market intelligence yourself. I think everyone would agree that it's fine that we are not the ones doing that immediate breaking news story on Delta. I would love to be able to do both, but sometimes there's a trade-off, and you have to live with that. And I think our business model really is that we create on the news side, that we create actionable news that people can action, and in their sales role, in their marketing role, in their planning role. Where if they're a CEO of a company, they can read the news from us and they can work with that. But I don't think that it's our business model to generate those clicks and then to get significant advertising volume from that or whatever. So if we were to run a tabloid aviation B2C website, we would be doing things completely differently than the way we're doing it at the moment. But I think it's important that you focus on something and then try to nail that. And we are trying to nail these two things. And we don't want to write features, and we don't want to write analysis or op-eds. I love what you do, Courtney, online, but we're trying not to be. You're very opinionated sometimes. We're trying not to be opinionated because that's not our business model. But we just
Courtney has an opinion.
No, he doesn't.
No,
He's
never.
not opinionated.
Well, I think he has no problem if we say he's not opinionated. What really hits him is if we would say he's not funny.
No, don't you dare. I'm opinionated. I know that. That's the whole point of analysis.
One thing, Thomas gave this nice speech now, but one thing that will shock you now is
I like
reading. Yeah, exactly. I'm the clickbait guy here, right? So I'm the No, wait, it's true. I'm the clickbait tabloid guy here. I'm the clickbait tabloid guy here, and we have a working, fully developed breaking news ticker that we can let run across our website, but they never use it. It was my idea to have this great breaking news ticker, and we even can send out breaking news email alerts. I don't know, new order, someone going bust or whatever. Sometimes when someone goes bust, we use it. But we are back to that thing. We built it. Everyone thought it's a great idea, and then when we started to implement it, we realized, okay, we are probably good enough to do breaking news in the US and in Europe and elsewhere. But there are certain markets where we don't have the 24/7 coverage yet, where we would be late again. So you can have breaking news on the US. You can at least on the East Coast, you can have breaking news around Africa, Europe, etc. Late Asia, but then there's Australia, whatever, where for a very long time we didn't have someone located, and we couldn't do it. So then we said, okay, this is not consistent. The product itself is not consistent, so let's not do it. And it's sort of an inside joke. Everyone, the news team, hires an additional journalist. I'm saying if we approve that journalist now to be hired, can I finally get my breaking news ticker to work now? And that's what it is. In the end, I think we would love to be both, but we decided to focus on quality first instead of being the fastest. At one point, hopefully we're big enough to do both quality and fast. It's always a trade-off, It's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
Let me offer kind of part of the value that you bring through that style. I've said this a couple times, but look, it's not so much what's on ch-aviation in the news, but if it's not there, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
There's extreme value in that.
It depends who you talk to. there's sometimes, because we have these guidelines, there is sometimes is there you get heated emails. I mean, that's one part of staying true to yourself as well. Thomas will correct me now if I say something wrong, because I don't have full insight into how news selects news articles, and which annoys me myself, because I find a great news article, think that's great, everyone should know about it, send it into my own news team, and they just come back and say, no, sorry, Max, totally, no one cares, right? Go away. Yesterday, Lufthansa canceled the route to Friedrichshafen. I think it's a massive news. I wanted to make it breaking news, and no one cared. But you have that. You have clients. I mean, we sell
right now.
We sell data. We sell data, and we sell news. So, and we have a lot of customers by now that are in these news as well. And then you have, for example, we have aircraft traders. And then they sell the first Dash 8 to Maldivian, and we will report about it because we consider that newsworthy. It's the first new aircraft type for them, so we will write that plane was sold to them, the sale was brokered by those guys, and they're in the news. And then they sell them another and another and another, and we don't cover them anymore, because our rule is we cover the first type, but we don't cover if they get the 25th Dash 8, we don't cover it. And then you have someone who spends serious money with you, and you have them on the email and on the phone and whatever, and you're always covering my competitors, but you're never covering me. And then you have to be there, and you have to say, and it's going back to what Thomas said with the sales, where you have to say no, and then you sit there and say, look, this is why we don't cover it, and this is actually why you pay us. That's why you're a subscriber, because you don't want to have that type of news yourself to read.
That's tough to do.
And that's sort of,
yeah,
and
that's impressive.
But that was a lot harder to do when we had 50 customers. It's a lot easier to do now that we have so many more customers. Yeah. And one of the cool things about a subscription is they're all in some bandwidth. So you rarely have a customer who flies out of your range. So you can sort of start. You're a lot more relaxed, because losing one customer will not mean the end of the world to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I also don't think that we honestly have lost a customer because we didn't write a press release.
That's true. Never heard of that.
And if you did, that's not a customer you want, right? I mean,
right.
It's if that was that big of a deal for somebody, like, you probably, it's okay if you don't have them as a customer. So, well, guys, we've been going on for almost 2 hours. Not quite there yet. But it's definitely been really, really cool. I mean, I love talking to you guys. It's always fun. It's always great to kind of hear about what you're doing. Plus, also got to hear kind of how you got to where you are today, which is really good. And I'm sure everybody will enjoy it as well. So I want to personally thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Certainly look forward to kind of seeing you guys, or keeping in touch with what's going on, and love to see what's next with CH. I mean, you got one big thing out. I'm sure now people are going, so what's next?
Yeah, I'm asking myself that.
A boat.
Yeah.
Get a boat. I'm telling you.
Get a boat. Yeah.
No, I need to get my pilot license finally.
Yeah, there you go.
He needs to get from a baby pilot to a real pilot. That's his next.
Next step. Yeah.
No, there's plenty of stuff coming. Stay tuned. We're not going to go anywhere, and we'll annoy anyone anyway. What we build, whenever we build something, it's not like we hide it. We're quite proud of it. So
yeah.
We'll show.
Oh, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having us. I looked at your prep sheet, and I looked at the answers and questions, and I thought, I'm not gonna look at it actually.
Yeah,
I hate it when you have these answers and then you have I got into aviation because whatever.
Don't tell Garrick.
You might have to cut.
Don't tell Garrick I said this. I never look at that thing.
Right.
No, it's so hard, because like when you're looking on your computer, like I look great. I mean, I look fantastic.
I say the same things over and over again.
I know you do, yeah.
See how this goes?
Over and over and over again. Just